The valley lay between two long ridges of green hills. In the early mornings, clouds rolled in low, filling the space between the slopes until it looked like a white river had taken the place of the fields. The air always smelled fresh after the night rain, and the sound of birds came from the trees that grew along the hillsides far away. A thin silver stream wound through the grass, glinting in the sunlight whenever it broke through the cloud-covered dot. In the middle of this valley stood a small wooden house. Its walls were weathered by years of wind and rain, but they were strong. The roof was made from wooden shingles, and the front door opened to a narrow path leading down toward the stream. This was where Tomas lived. Tomas did not know much about where he had come from. He had no memory of a family or a childhood beyond the last few years. His earliest memories were of waking in this house, with food already stored in the kitchen and clothes folded in a chest at the foot of his bed. There had been no one to greet him or explain his life. It was as if he had always been there, already grown enough to care for himself. Every night, Tomas dreamed. These were not normal dreams of animals or far-off places. His dreams showed vast halls made of shining metal, glowing symbols floating in the air, and corridors that seemed to hum with power. In these dreams, he heard voices speaking in a language he somehow understood. The voices never said his name, but they spoke as if they knew him. They told him about stars and worlds that spun far beyond the valley. They spoke of building something, and of waiting for a time when all would be ready. When Tomas woke, he always felt a strange pull toward the highest hill near his house. This hill rose like a watchtower above the valley. On clear days, he could see far in every direction. On cloudy days, the top was covered in mist so thick he could barely see his hands. No matter the weather, he climbed it every morning, feeling as though someone might be watching him from above. On one such morning, the sky was heavy with cloud. Tomas climbed the hill slowly, his boots slipping on the wet grass. At the top, he stood still and looked at the shifting white sea below. The wind tugged at his shirt and carried the scent of rain. Then, for a moment, the clouds parted. A ray of sunlight touched the valley floor, and in that same instant, Tomas saw something far above the clouds. It was only for a heartbeat, but he knew he had not imagined it. A shape, smooth and silver, hovered silently in the sky. It had sharp edges that caught the sunlight, making it shine like a blade. Before Tomas could take a step toward it, the clouds closed again, hiding everything. He stood still for a long time, waiting for the clouds to part again. But they did not. When night came, the dreams were different. This time, the voices were closer, and their words were clear. They spoke of a sequence that was nearly finished. They spoke of completion and activation. The words felt strange in Tomas's mind, but they carried a weight he could not ignore. In the following days, Tomas tried to push the dreams away. He kept himself busy by fishing in the stream, tending to the small garden beside the house, and mending tools. Yet the dreams kept coming, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Even when he was indoors, he sometimes felt the air shift as though something high above was moving with purpose. One afternoon, while walking back from the stream with a bucket of water, Tomas noticed something strange. The clouds above were not moving with the wind. They seemed to be drifting in a slow circle over the valley. The light dimmed for a moment, as if something large had passed between the sun and the earth. He set down the bucket and stared up. The clouds shifted again, and he thought he saw the faint outline of the same silver shape as before. That night, he lay in bed unable to sleep. The air in the room felt warmer than usual, and the shadows along the walls seemed to move slightly, as if they were being bent by some unseen force. He closed his eyes, and the dream began before he had fully drifted into sleep. This time, he stood in a vast room with walls of glass. Beyond the glass, stars burned in every shade of white and gold. A long table stretched across the room, and round it stood tall figures made of light and crystal. Their faces were smooth and without features, yet Tomas felt their attention fixed on him. One of them spoke. The voice was calm, neither deep nor high, and it carried no accent he could name. The words were simple. "You are nearly ready." Tomas opened his mouth to speak, but the dream shifted. He was running along a narrow bridge made of silver. With a great emptiness beneath him, ahead, a door was opening, spilling golden light into the darkness. He reached for it, but woke suddenly, his heart beating fast. The next morning, the sky was brighter than it had been in weeks. As Tomas climbed the hill, he felt an urgency he could not explain. When he reached the top, he scanned the sky, waiting for the clouds to move. Minutes passed, and then it happened. The clouds tore apart, and the silver shape appeared again. This time, it did not vanish right away. It hung there, motionless, like a bird watching from above. Tomas could see now that it was not a bird or any machine he knew. It had a smooth, curved body and a row of glowing lights along its side. He felt sure it was looking directly at him. Then the clouds closed once more, hiding it from sight. But the moment stayed with him. He knew, without a doubt, that whatever the silver thing was, it had been waiting for him. As he walked back down the hill, Tomas felt the dreams were no longer just dreams. They were messages, and the watchers above the clouds were real. He did not know why they had chosen him or what they wanted, but he felt the first stirrings of something he had never felt before: purpose. The morning after Tomas saw the silver shape clearly for the first time, he woke with the sound of rain tapping against the window. The air was cool and carried the scent of wet grass. He sat up and listened for the usual sounds of the valley: birds calling, wind moving through the trees, water rushing in the stream. Yet today there was something else in the air, a faint hum that seemed to come from far above. He pulled on his boots and stepped outside. The clouds hung low, so thick that the tops of the nearest hills were hidden. The hum grew stronger as he walked toward the hill he always climbed. It was not like the wind or any tool he had heard before. It was steady, deep, and filled with a strange rhythm, as if it were alive. Tomas began his climb. The grass was wet and the ground soft under his boots. As he went higher, the hum became clearer. At the top, the world was nothing but mist. He could not see more than a few steps ahead. The sound above him was steady, and he felt a faint vibration in the ground beneath his feet. He waited. Minutes passed, and the mist shifted. For a moment, he caught sight of movement above the clouds, something smooth and curved, gliding slowly. He could not see the whole shape, but it was enough to know the silver thing was still there. That night, his dreams returned with new strength. He stood on a wide platform that seemed to float in the sky. Around him were the tall, crystal-like figures he had seen before. Their bodies gave off soft light, and their movements were slow but precise. He could not see any eyes, yet he felt them watching him closely. One figure stepped forward. Its voice was calm and clear. "We are the Watchers. We have seen you since your first breath. You are the result of our shaping, our combined dream-given life." Tomas wanted to ask what that meant, but his mouth would not form the words. Another figure spoke. "Your time in the valley was for learning. You were to grow without our direct touch, but the moment to act is close. Soon the clouds will open for you." The dream faded, and Tomas woke before sunrise. He sat on the edge of his bed, thinking about the words he had heard. They had said he was the result of their dream. Could that be true? Was it possible that his life had not begun in the usual way? The day passed quietly, though the hum in the air returned now and then. Each time it came, Tomas would look up and imagine the silver shape above the clouds, waiting for him. On the third day after the dream, the weather changed. A sharp wind blew through the valley, scattering the clouds into thin layers. The sky was brighter, and Tomas decided to climb the hill again. When he reached the top, he saw it the silver ship clearer than ever before. It floated silently above the clouds, its surface shining in the sunlight. From this distance, Tomas could see it was larger than he had guessed. Lights ran along its sides, moving in patterns like waves. Then something new happened. A beam of light shot down from the ship, bright and steady. It struck the ground only a few steps from where Tomas stood. At first, he was too surprised to move. Then he stepped toward it. The light was warm but not blinding. Inside the beam, a small silver object began to lower toward the ground. It stopped in front of him, floating at chest height. Tomas reached out slowly and took it. It was a pendant, shaped like a circle with a line running through the center. The surface was smooth, and a faint glow pulsed within it the moment he touched it. The hum grew louder, and a voice filled his mind. It was not one of the voices from his dreams. This one was clearer, closer. Tomas, you have been given the key. Keep it with you. Soon we will meet. The beam of light vanished, and the hum faded. Tomas stood alone on the hill, the pendant resting in his palm. He felt the faint warmth of it against his skin and knew it was more than just a piece of metal dot back at his house. He placed the pendant on the table and studied it in the light from the window. He turned it over, but there were no marks or seams when he set it down. It rolled slightly and stopped, as if it had chosen its place. That night, his dream came again. But this time it began in darkness. Slowly, shapes formed, and he saw them. Inside of the silver ship, the same crystal-like figures were there, standing in a half circle. In the center was a figure slightly taller than the rest, its light brighter. This taller figure spoke. I am Mira, the one who leads this crew. We have shaped you for a purpose we cannot fulfill ourselves. The pendant is a bridge between your world and ours. With it, we can speak directly, without dreams. Tomas listened without speaking. Mira continued, your life in the valley has prepared you. You have learned to live without guidance, to think and choose freely. That freedom is what we needed to give form to. Now the time comes when you must decide to leave the valley and join us above the clouds. The dream faded once more, but when Tomas woke, the pendant was warm in his hand, even though he had left it on the table before sleeping. The days that followed were filled with quiet waiting. Tomas kept the pendant with him at all times. Sometimes it would glow faintly when he was outside. Other times, it remained dark. He knew the ship was still above, watching. One evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, the clouds above the valley shifted again. The silver ship appeared briefly, and a single beam of light swept across the top of the hill before vanishing. Tomas knew it was a signal. The moment of meeting was getting closer. He looked at the pendant, felt its weight, and thought about the dreams, the voices, and the watchers who had shaped him. Whatever was waiting above the clouds. It was connected to him in a way he could not yet explain, and somewhere, high above. The crew of the silver ship continued to watch, waiting for the moment when Tomas would step forward and choose his path. The morning came with a pale sky and a soft wind moving across the valley. Tomas stood outside his small wooden house, the pendant hanging around his neck. He had started wearing it since the night he dreamed of Mira. It felt strange to wear, something that had come from the sky, but he could not imagine leaving it behind. The air held a quiet hum again. It was faint, but Tomas knew it was a sign. The ship was above the clouds, watching as it always did. For days now, he had sensed a growing pull toward it, as if something inside him wanted to rise upward and meet the crew that had spoken to him in dreams. That night, he fell asleep quickly, and the dream came before the darkness had fully settled. He was standing on the same wide platform inside the silver ship. Round him were the tall, crystal-like beings. Their bodies glowed with soft light, and their movements were slow and graceful. Mira stepped forward from the group. The light that came from her body was brighter than the rest, like the first light of morning. Tomas, she said, her voice clear, you wish to know who we are and why we have made you. Tomas nodded. In the dream, his voice could not rise, but his thoughts were open to them. Mira began to speak, and her words painted pictures in his mind. Long ago, her people had traveled from world to world. They were explorers who moved between the stars, learning and sharing knowledge. They had no need for food or shelter as humans did, for their bodies were made of a different kind of matter, light bound to crystal form. They could live for many ages, but they could not create life as humans did. Their ships were their homes, their worlds. Each ship carried a small crew, linked together in thought. They could share ideas instantly, and sometimes they could even shape those ideas into real things. But the one thing they had never been able to shape fully was a human being. Mira told him that in their travels, They had found worlds where life had grown naturally. They admired humans more than any other life form. Humans could think freely, could feel deeply, and could choose paths no one else would expect. To the crew of the silver ship, this freedom was a gift they themselves did not have. For years, they had studied humans from far away. They learned the patterns of human thought, the way they moved, and the way they dreamed. Then one day, the crew decided they would try something new. They would create a human not with hands or machines, but with the combined strength of their minds. This was the beginning of the Dream Project. The crew gathered in the heart of the ship and linked their thoughts. They imagined a child who would grow into someone strong, curious, and kind. They dreamed of the skills he would learn, the courage he would have, and the choices he might make. But there was one rule they agreed on. Once the child was placed into the world, they would not shape him any further. They would watch from a distance and let him grow freely. Only in this way could they see if the dream could truly become human. Mira's voice grew softer. Tomas, you were that dream. You opened your eyes in the house we built for you, with food to eat and tools to use. We placed you in a valley where you could live safely, but still learn the ways of the world. Every day we watched, but we never touched your thoughts or told you what to do. Everything you are came from your own choices. Tomas felt a weight settle on him. The valley had always felt like home, yet now he knew it was part of something much larger. He was not born as other humans were. He had been imagined into life by a crew who had never set foot on the ground where he lived. Mira stepped closer. You are proof that we can create life as humans do, but you are also more. You carry in you the freedom that we have always admired. Now, that freedom is needed. The dream shifted, and Tomas saw an image of the stars, far beyond them. A darkness moved like a cloud of smoke. It swallowed light and left nothing behind. Mira's voice spoke over the image. There is a danger approaching. It destroys thought and memory. We can slow it, but we cannot end it. We believe you can. Tomas stared at the darkness. Why me? He thought. Though he did not speak. Mira answered as if she had heard him. Because you can choose in ways we cannot. We follow patterns. You break them. You may find a path where we see none. The dream began to fade, but Mira's voice stayed with him. Soon, Tomas, we will call you to the ship. The choice will be yours, but know that the world above and the world below will both depend on it. Tomas woke in the early hours before sunrise. The pendant was warm against his chest. He stepped outside and looked toward the hills, the clouds. Above, the valley were thin, and for a moment, he thought he saw the faint outline of the silver ship in the sky. Over the next days, Tomas could not stop thinking about what Mira had told him. He imagined the crew gathered in their glowing hall, dreaming him into being. He thought about the darkness moving through the stars. Most of all, he thought about the word Mira had repeated choice. Each morning he climbed the hill, waiting for the light from the ship to return. Some days the clouds did everything, other days he saw a faint flash as if the ship was testing its lights. One evening, the sky turned gold as the sun set. The pendant around his neck began to glow on its own, and the hum in the air grew strong. Tomas knew what it meant. The crew was near, and soon they would speak to him without dreams. He stood on the hill until night came, watching the clouds shift under the moonlight. He felt the pull of something greater than the valley, a call that came not from the ground but from far above, somewhere in the mist and stars. The dream that had made him was waiting for his answer. The morning was calm, the air still and cool. Tomas stepped out of his wooden house and felt the pendant resting against his chest. It had been quiet for days, yet today it gave off a faint warmth. He looked toward the highest hill and knew he would climb it again. The valley was fresh after the night's rain. Drops of water clung to the grass, shining in the early light. As Tomas walked, he noticed the hum in the air returning. It was stronger than before, almost like a low note from an unseen instrument. Each step toward the hill seemed to make it louder. When he reached the top, he saw that the clouds were higher than usual. The air above felt alive, as if it was moving. In patterns unseen, Tomas stood still, watching the sky. Then, without warning, A beam of light broke through the clouds. It struck the ground in front of him, bright but soft on his eyes. The pendant began to glow, matching the light from the sky. Tomas reached up to touch it, and as he did, a voice filled his mind. It was not like the voices in his dreams. This one was clear and near, as if the speaker stood beside him. "Tomas," the voice said, "you are ready to see more." The light grew brighter, and within it appeared shaped symbols he had never seen before, yet somehow understood. They spoke of paths and energy, of bridges between worlds. As he watched, he realized the symbols were not only in front of him, but also forming in his thoughts. He knew what they meant, even without learning them. The voice spoke again. "Your mind holds the pattern. You can now read and see what we send. This is the first step in joining us." Tomas looked up toward the source of the beam. The clouds shifted, and for a brief moment, the silver ship became visible. It hovered without sound, its lights moving like waves. He felt its attention on him, not in a heavy way, but like the steady gaze of someone who knows you well. The beam faded, and the ship vanished back into the clouds. The hum in the air remained for a while, then slowly faded too. Tomas walked back down the hill, feeling the pendant cool against his skin. That night, the dream came again. He was in the silver hall inside the ship. The crew stood in their half circle, and Mira was at the center. She spoke without delay. "Tomas, what you felt today was a direct signal. We have given you the ability to see and understand what we send without dreams. The pendant is your key to this. In time, you will use it to guide yourself to us." Tomas asked in thought, "Why now?" Mira's light grew brighter. "Because the moment is close. The darkness moves faster than expected. We need you to begin preparing." The dream shifted, showing an image of the stars again. The dark cloud was larger now, its edges curling and folding in on themselves. It did not drift like normal clouds. It moved with purpose, as if it knew where it was going. Mira's voice was steady. "This is what we face. It does not live, yet it feeds. It takes not only matter, but also thought and memory. If it reaches this world, the valley you know will be empty and silent. We will fight it, but you can help in a way we cannot." Tomas tried to understand. "I am only one person," Mira answered. "You are one person who can choose without pattern. You can act where we see no path. That is the strength we build into you." The dream faded, and Tomas woke to find the pendant glowing faintly in the dark. Over the next days, strange things began to happen. While walking in the forest, Tomas felt the presence of a deer before he saw it. When fishing by the stream, he could sense the movement of fish in the water below. It was as if his senses had grown sharper. He began to test these changes. Standing on the hill, he could sometimes feel the position of the ship above the clouds, even when it was hidden. At night, he could recall his dreams in perfect detail. Words and symbols from the ship came to him while awake, as if the crew were teaching him quietly throughout the day. One afternoon, while tending his small garden, the pendant grew warm again. A voice spoke in his mind, this time without light or dream. "Tomas, you will soon see us without the clouds between. When the time comes, step into the light, and we will bring you to us." Tomas paused, his hands resting on the soil. He knew what this meant. The day he had been waiting for was close. The valley had been his whole world, yet he would soon leave it. That night, sleep did not come easily. He walked outside and looked up at the sky. The clouds were thin, and the moon cast a pale glow over the hills. Somewhere above, the silver ship waited. He thought about the crew, the way they had dreamed him into life, the care they had taken to let him grow on his own. They had given him freedom, but now they were asking him to use it not for himself, but for something far greater. The hum returned, faint at first, then growing stronger. Tomas closed his eyes and listened. It was not just sound. It was a signal, and it carried meaning. The meaning was simple. Soon, he opened his eyes, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw movement above the clouds, light shifting in patterns, like those on the pendant. He knew the next time the beam came, it would not be for a message. It would be for him. And when that day came, He would have to decide whether to stay in the valley or rise to meet the watchers who had shaped him. The morning began like many others, with a thin layer of clouds hanging low over the valley. But Tomas felt something different the moment he stepped outside. The pendant on his chest was warm, and the hum in the air was steady and strong. It was not fading as it usually did. Instead, it seemed to grow with every passing moment. He looked toward the highest hill. The air above it shimmered faintly, like sunlight on water. He knew without doubt that the ship was there, waiting. This was the day Mira had spoken of. Tomas climbed the hill, his steps quick but sure. The grass was dry, and the wind carried the scent of distant rain. As he reached the top, the clouds above him began to shift and pull apart. A ray of white light broke through, wider and brighter than any he had seen before. The pendant glowed, and the voice of Mira filled his mind, clear and close. Tomas, the time has come. Step into the light. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. The beam wrapped around him like warm air. For a brief moment, the hill and the valley faded from sight. Then he felt himself rising. The wind rushed past, yet he felt no cold. The light carried him upward through the thinning clouds. When he emerged above them, his breath caught. The sky was a deep, endless blue, and in front of him floated the silver ship. Its surface was smooth and curved, catching the sunlight in bright flashes. Rows of lights moved along its sides in slow patterns. The beam drew him closer until he was at a large opening on the ship's underside. He passed through a field of faint light and stepped onto a smooth floor that felt warmer than stone but cooler than wood. The beam faded, and the opening closed behind him. The space around him was wide and bright. The walls curved upward, and a soft white glow came from lines that ran along them. The air was fresh, carrying a faint scent like rain on stone. From the far side of the chamber, figures began to approach. They were just as he had seen in his dreams, tall, slender, and made of crystal-like forms that shone from within. Their movements were graceful, almost slow, yet each step felt certain and measured. Mira stepped forward from among them. Her glow was brighter than the rest, and her form seemed slightly taller. "Welcome, Tomas," she said, her voice the same as in his dreams but fuller now, with a faint echo. Tomas stood still, taking in the sight of her. "It is real," he said quietly, though he was not sure if he spoke aloud or in thought. "It is real." Mira answered, "And you are here because you chose to be." She gestured toward the others. "This is my crew," each of them shared, "in the dream that brought you into being. We have watched your life in the valley from the first day. We have seen your choices, your patience, and your courage." One of the crew stepped forward. The light within them pulsed gently. "We could not predict the shape of your mind," they said. "That is why you are important. You are not bound by the patterns we follow." Mira turned back to Tomas. "You already know of the danger beyond the stars. It grows closer. If it reaches this world, it will take not only what is seen, but what is remembered. Our kind can resist for a time, but we cannot end it. You may be able to, if you accept the path we will set before you." Tomas felt the weight of her words. "Why would I be able to do what you cannot?" Mira's voice softened. "Because you carry something we do not, true unpredictability. When we act, our choices are shaped by the shared thoughts of our kind. You are free to act in ways even you cannot foresee, against the darkness. That freedom is a weapon." She led him to a wide window that stretched across one wall. Beyond it, the curve of the planet filled most of the view. The valley was hidden under the clouds far below, and beyond that lay the endless blue of the oceans. Mira pointed to the distance, where a faint shadow seemed to shift against the black of space. "That is the edge of the darkness. It will be here sooner than we had hoped." Tomas stared at it. From so far away, it looked harmless, like smoke. Yet he remembered the images from his dreams, worlds left empty and silent after it passed. "What would I need to do?" he asked. Mira turned to him. "First, you must learn to use the abilities already growing within you. You have felt them in the valley, sensing life before you see it, knowing where the ship is without sight. These are only the beginning. We will help you grow stronger, but the choices of how and when to act will be yours alone. One of the crew placed a small object in his hand. It was smooth and light, shaped like a shallow disc, with faint lines running across its surface. This will allow you to move between here and the world below when needed, they explained. You are not our prisoner. You are free to return to your valley whenever you wish. Tomas looked at the object, then at the pendant on his chest. He realized that everything they had given him so far had been a tool, not a chain. Mira stepped closer. We have shaped you, Tomas, but we have not owned you. Every step you take now is your own. That is what makes you the answer we need. He looked out at the planet again, then at the dark shadow in the distance. He thought about his quiet valley, the stream, the hills, and the mornings filled with bird calls. If the darkness reached the planet, none of it would remain. I will learn, Tomas said finally, and when the time comes, I will choose my path. Mira's light grew warmer. Then we will begin. The crew moved around him, their forms glowing in unison, the air filled with a soft hum, deeper and richer than the one he had heard in the valley. The floor beneath him seemed to shift slightly, and new shapes began to form patterns of light and shadow moving across the walls. This was the beginning of his training. And as he stood among the beings who had dreamed him into life, Tomas felt something he had never felt before. It was not fear, nor was it pride. It was the sense that the life he had known was only the first chapter of a much larger story. The silver ship moved silently through the endless blue sky, far above the clouds where Tomas had lived all his life, inside the glowing halls. Tomas stood facing the tall figures, who had dreamed him into being. Their light pulsed softly around him, filling the space with calm and strength. Mira stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, but full of meaning. Tomas, today you will face your first trial. It will test your mind and your freedom to choose. Remember, no path is fixed. You must find your own way. Tomas felt a flutter of nervousness. He had never been tested like this before. Everything he knew came from the valley's simple days, quiet nights, and the slow passage of seasons. Now he was far from home, in a place that was both strange and beautiful. A narrow corridor of light appeared before him. Mira gestured to it. Step forward when you are ready. Tomas took a deep breath and walked into the glowing path. The air changed. It was cooler and heavier, as if he had entered a new world made of light and shadow. Suddenly, the path disappeared. Tomas was standing in a dark room with no doors or windows. The silence was thick. A voice spoke inside his mind. This trial is not one of strength, but of thought. You will face visions drawn from your memories and fears. You must decide which to follow and which to leave behind. The room around him shifted. Images appeared like floating scenes. The valley he loved, the small house where he grew up, the stream where he fished, all were perfect and peaceful. Then the scenes changed. The sky darkened, the trees withered, and the stream dried to dust. Tomas saw himself standing alone, lost and afraid. The darkness he had seen in dreams was closing in. The voice returned. What will you do, Tomas? Will you run to safety, or will you face the unknown? Tomas closed his eyes. He thought of the valley, but also of the silver ship and the crew who had brought him here. He remembered Mira's words about freedom and choice. When he opened his eyes, the dark scenes began to dissolve. Tomas stepped forward, moving toward a new light. The room brightened until he stood in a field of stars, vast and endless. A figure appeared, a smaller version of himself, smiling and calm. You have passed the first part, the figure said, but the trial is not over. Suddenly, Tomas felt a wave of questions flooding his mind. What if he failed? What if the darkness reached the valley? What if he was not strong enough? The voice asked again, will you let fear guide you, or will you trust your own heart? Tomas steadied his breath and said quietly, I will trust myself. The starry field shimmered and changed. Now he was back in the ship's hull, surrounded by the glowing crew. Mira nodded, her light shining bright. You have done well, Tomas. You faced your fears and chose freedom. This is the power that makes you different. One of the crew stepped forward with a small device. This will help you focus your mind. Use it when you feel lost or unsure. Tomas took the device and felt warmth spread through his fingers. It felt like a promise, a tool to guide him when the darkness came. Over the next days, Tomas trained with the crew. They taught him to control his senses, to listen to the hum of the ship, and to open his mind to new ideas. He learned to move between the valley and the ship using the small disc they had given him. Each time he returned to the valley, he saw it with new eyes. The trees seemed taller, the air fresher, and the stars brighter at night. The world felt bigger, and Tomas understood that his home was part of something greater. One evening, as he sat by the stream, the pendant warmed again. The hum returned, but this time it was urgent. Tomas closed his eyes and saw the dark cloud moving faster through the stars. He opened his eyes and knew that soon the trial would not be a test inside the ship, but a battle for the valley, for the world below. The silver ship moved silently through the endless blue sky, far above the clouds where Tomas had lived all his life. Inside the glowing halls, Tomas stood facing the tall figures who had dreamed him into being. Their light pulsed softly around him, filling the space with calm and strength. Mira stepped forward. Her voice was gentle but full of meaning. Tomas, today you will face your first trial. It will test your mind and your freedom to choose. Remember, no path is fixed. You must find your own way. Tomas felt a flutter of nervousness. He had never been tested like this before. Everything he knew came from the valley's simple days, quiet nights, and the slow passage of seasons. Now he was far from home, in a place that was both strange and beautiful. A narrow corridor of light appeared before him. Mira gestured to it. Step forward when you are ready. Tomas took a deep breath and walked into the glowing path. The air changed. It was cooler and heavier, as if he had entered a new world made of light and shadow. Suddenly, the path disappeared. Tomas was standing in a dark room with no doors or windows. The silence was thick. A voice spoke inside his mind. This trial is not one of strength, but of thought. You will face visions drawn from your memories and fears. You must decide which to follow and which to leave behind. The room round him shifted. Images appeared like floating scenes. The valley he loved, the small house where he grew up, the stream where he fished, all were perfect and peaceful. Then the scenes changed. The sky darkened, the trees withered, and the stream dried to dust. Tomas saw himself standing alone, lost and afraid. The darkness he had seen in dreams was closing in. The voice returned. What will you do, Tomas? Will you run to safety, or will you face the unknown? Tomas closed his eyes. He thought of the valley, but also of the silver ship and the crew who had brought him here. He remembered Mira's words about freedom and choice. When he opened his eyes, the dark scenes began to dissolve. Tomas stepped forward, moving toward a new light. The room brightened until he stood in a field of stars, vast and endless. A figure appeared, a smaller version of himself, smiling and calm. You have passed the first part, the figure said, but the trial is not over. Suddenly, Tomas felt a wave of questions flooding his mind. What if he failed? What if the darkness reached the valley? What if he was not strong enough? The voice asked again, will you let fear guide you, or will you trust your own heart? Tomas steadied his breath and said quietly, I will trust myself. The starry field shimmered and changed. Now he was back in the ship's hall, surrounded by the glowing crew. Mira nodded, her light shining bright. You have done well, Tomas. You faced your fears and chose freedom. This is the power that makes you different. One of the crew stepped forward with a small device. This will help you focus your mind. Use it when you feel lost or unsure. Tomas took the device and felt warmth spread through his fingers. It felt like a promise, a tool to guide him when the darkness came. Over the next days, Tomas trained with the crew. They taught him to control his senses, to listen to the hum of the ship, and to open his mind to new ideas. He learned to move between the valley and the ship using the small disc they had given him. Each time he returned to the valley, he saw it with new eyes. The trees seemed taller, the air fresher, and the stars brighter at night. The world felt bigger, and Tomas understood that his home was part of something greater. One evening, as he sat by the stream, the pendant warmed again. The hum returned, but this time it was urgent. Tomas closed his eyes and saw the dark cloud, moving faster through the stars. He opened his eyes and knew that soon the trial would not be a test inside the ship, but a battle for the valley, for the world below.